welcome. We'd like to, in this season, and with a new discovery for both of us, both for Peter Kling, in this unusual visit of his back into what's called the grid, and he will be telling us what it is like to be off-grid and on-grid, like a fish out of water and in water.
Yeah, without a doubt.
This unusual visit of his back into what's called the grid. And so without further ado, one of the most distinguished hermeneuticists that we know. Welcome, Peter.
Well, thank you very much, Alfred. It's always a pleasure sitting down and chatting. And wow, it's been just about a year, I think, since we've had our last interview together, and a lot has happened. You know, we left. Trump was just taken office, and we're going to talk more about this later on. And I can't believe how many people actually hate this man. It blows my mind, but whatever. It's all part of what's yet to come.
Right.
But yeah.
Right. We will get to that. However,
yes,
our subject for our beginning subject for today is Dr. Frank Strange's Dead Sea Scrolls and Prophecy. And just to read this, Dr. Frank Strange's lecture on the Dead Sea Scrolls, in which he reads from the many open descriptions of UFOs, spaceships, other inhabited planets and extraterrestrials, outer space battles in the Dead Sea Scrolls, and of death threats that he, Dr. Frank Strange, has received from the Israel-based rabbinical guardians of the scrolls for making these contexts public. And so what is this Israel-based faction, which is at the level of national security in Israel, a national security secret of the Dead Sea Scrolls, where they don't want to expose that there's an extraterrestrial component to the return of Jesus or to the identity of Jesus and to the identity of Jesus's mission here. So we're turning to our favorite hermeneuticist to really tell us. So over to you.
Well, thank you, Alfred. You know, I guess the best place to start is at the beginning with this. And when I have a long history of biblical education, which was not from the religious compounds that we have with us, so to speak, or it was based on history and prophecy. And my first love was science, though, because of an experience that happened to me when I was 8 years old, and I'm 9 years old, rather. I had a dream, and that dream actually literally came true about a week to 10 days later. Exactly what I saw in my dream is what I experienced in real life, real time. And so that scared me to I won't say to death, it scared me to action, I guess would probably be the best thing, because I remember running home and I told my mom, I said, "Mom, I just had a dream that came true." And she said, "Well, that's nice, dear. It's time for you to go to bed." And so, yeah, I was sent to bed. And so that actually caused a paradox in my life, which caused me to look towards science for answers. Is I had to know how I was able to see something in the future. And you know, this as a 9-year-old child. And so I started studying biology and chemistry, and chemistry became my major. But it wasn't until I was 22 years old and actually took a class that was based on how Edgar Cayce was able to do his thing and becoming the 20th century's greatest psychic. It's the same basic principles, just broken down into science. So it made great appeal to my mind, and I learned how our brain actually works. In order for us to become what you would call more conscious or ascend to a, quote, higher consciousness, we actually literally have to slow our brains down. And guess what? When our brains slow down to zero and we are dead, the consciousness leaves the body permanently. Not just the consciousness, but it's the life force that goes along with it. Ask anybody that has had a near-death experience or interview them, and every experience is different. They're all like, snowflakes. No two are alike. I've not heard anybody have the experience that I had, and mine here was unique. But they all seem to have one thing in common: the great white light. And so my thought is that it's our life experience that lets us start to get used to the idea of a post-life experience, whatever that might turn out to be. But it showed me clearly that what we consider the soul, our life force and consciousness, is separate from the body. And when we're alive, they are contained together because it's the life force which keeps the body alive. When we're dead, bang, it's out of here. And by scripture, Genesis 9:5, Yahweh says, I shall ask back the soul from every living creature, and from man I shall ask back his soul. When you go back to verse 4, our soul is tied up in our blood. So once the blood stops moving, the soul is released. Basically is what it seems to work out to. So we as humans, now this is kind of important for us to understand, because we as humans have this soul within a physical body which we keep alive. And this body that we have now is not the body that we were born with by any means. Depending on your age, your body rebuilds itself about once every 7 years, and your brain takes about 10 years to rebuild itself, which means at my age, I'm completely rebuilt 6 times. Now think about that. I have a body and a brain that is no older than 10 years. It's got a little mileage on it. I've been ridden hard and put away wet a few times, but my physical body is not older than 10 years, body and brain. However, my soul and consciousness, it will be 62 this coming year. But my body's still only 10 years old at best, because it's been rebuilt over the years several times. It's like getting a brand new car. You ride it around town, you have an accident, they rebuild it. It's never quite the same. But with us, it's more on a genetic level. So once we take the scriptures, and something that I've said almost right from the day one was that there's 2 problems with the Bible. It's incomplete and it's a need-to-know book. In other words, only the stuff that we absolutely need to know is in there. And then still, I was able to determine, based on the biblical record and what we have recorded in history, once you put them both together, they match up. Okay, let's not get involved in millions and billions of years of Earth history and the 24-hour day that God used to create it, because it wasn't 24 hours. What would he be doing now? Everybody has this, I shouldn't say everybody. It seems that people who are deeply stoked in religious dogma, let's call it that, or doctrine, believe that God runs on man's timetable and that it only took him 6 24-hour days to create the earth. And to them, I say, well, what's he been doing for the last 6,000 years then? Oh, he's been doing other things. We just don't know about it. Well, then why does it say he rested after that? But that's a whole other side of the scripture. That the actual truth is, Earth, 1,000 Earth years is a cosmic day. So even though we might be 1,000 years old, our body's still only going to be 10. Our body and brain will still only be 10 years old. If we had perfect human DNA, we can go on and on and on and on, and have our bodies rebuilt indefinitely. And that was the longest perplexing thing for genetic engineers. Why, and physicians, why does the body break down and die? And then they found out, oh, well, we run out of telomeres, the DNA falls apart, and that's it, we're done. Unless we have some sort of an accident before that. So when we go back and look at the scripture, we got Genesis, the 2nd chapter, the 21st through the 23rd verse, where God says, it's not good for the man to be alone. I'm going to make a helper for him. So what does he do? He causes a sleep to come over the man. He opens up the flesh, removes a tissue sample, a rib, closes the flesh, and then proceeds to build a woman out of the rib. And he brings it to the man, and the man says, at last, this is flesh of my flesh and bone of my bone. This one was taken from man. I shall call her woman. Not only is this a record of genetic engineering, but the man knew that the woman was genetically engineered. It's right there in black and white, and we wouldn't be able to figure this out until we figured out what genetic engineering was. So, time capsule, right? When we look at it from that standpoint, now we got to say, well, who were the genetic engineers? And then we go back and look at the fossil record, and we can see how many times the fossil record has been tweaked over the lifespan of what is planet spaceship Earth. And the biggest biological advancement was during the Cambrian period. We had more different types of life forms during the Cambrian period than any other period since. It's only been extinction level events. The stuff that was buried during the Cambrian period sits on the side of Mount Everest and up in the Andes Mountains now. It's all been hoisted upward. And that's the 6-foot clams. Could you imagine clams? What a bowl of chowder that would make. All of the trilobites, that was 18,000 different varieties of one species. That was a genetic engineering party on Earth. So we know there are other life forms that are involved in us being here. So, but what's the difference? We get two stories. We get the Anunnaki story and we get the biblical story. The Anunnaki story basically says that, yeah, we genetically engineered you and you are our servants. The biblical story says, well, we created you in the image of God and you have everything on this planet in your subjection. Let's see. Created in the image of God, genetically engineered slaves. Created in the image of God, that makes us God's children. Genetically engineered slaves, doesn't that make us one step removed from a chimpanzee with more intelligence so we can mine gold for a slave race? Advanced beings that created politics and religion to keep the human race enslaved for the last 5,000 years, and that's historic record. Takes us right back to where the cradle of civilization, which just happens to be where the Anunnaki landed, which, by the way, is the second alien invasion of planet Earth. The first one is recorded just within a couple of chapters within the Bible, but is best recorded in the book of Enoch. So, bottom line is, when you look at the scriptures, it's not a book that has anything to do with religion. It's a book of 6,000 years of ET involvement in human affairs. 6,000 years of extraterrestrial involvement. And this one group says, hey, we created you as gods. Gee, maybe that's why we can take our psyche and go anywhere with it. We can take our consciousness and transmit it anywhere across the universe. Now, think about if the churches taught this, said, hey, the holy mystery of how Eve was created wouldn't be a holy mystery now, would it? It would be a story of genetic engineering. And the logical question is, well, who are the genetic engineers? Well, now we have to look at this from a totally different viewpoint. We don't look at this from, angels playing on harps and devils with pitchforks, or, ghosts that go boo in the night. We're dealing with interdimensional, extraterrestrial, alien life forms. And I use the word plural. The scriptures talk of 4 different life forms. And when we look at Revelation, the 19th chapter, where it talks about the King of Kings and Lord of Lords returning, or Jesus, the Messiah, returning, he returns with the armies of heaven, armies being plural. So we're not just dealing with reptilians or grays or people from whatever star system they claim they're from. We're dealing with interdimensionals And we know that by the historic record, especially when you go to the book of Enoch, where it says that these life forms had the ability to turn from the form of fire to the form of man and back to the form of fire. What's that? So it's there, but we look at it, and academia for decades has laughed it off, and the church won't admit it, and yes, changed the Bible. If God's number is 7, why are there 66 books in the Bible? That's Satan's number. 6, spiritually incomplete, and twice 66 books. Where are the other 11 that would make it 77 as a spiritually complete book? Maybe they're in the Dead Sea Scrolls. And so that brings us to today's subject. One of the things that I was concerned about, because I had alien contact shortly after my 18th birthday, and that did not end well. It left them, they put a death warrant on me. And since then, I should have been dead 16 times, was once, and got sent back. I've got to meet my guardian angel more than once, and other people have seen it too. I do not deny that there are other life forms. I strongly endorse that. And they will present themselves as the good guys all the time. We know that through scripture, Satan keeps on presenting himself as an agent or an angel of light. Enlightenment. We go back to the Enlightenment era of the French Revolution that really brought on, where now we were supposed to look toward academia as opposed to religion for enlightenment. Well, here's a newsflash. Academia has basically become what the church was during the Dark Ages. Our institutions have become places of stupidity anymore. And if you don't believe that, look at the kids that they're producing that know nothing as they're coming out of college. Regardless, we are in a situation where we know we have a negative alien ET force just by the very fact of, look how public child trafficking and child sacrificing has become. When I first broached this subject about 7-8 years ago, within 24 hours, I got a message. I post some things on Facebook. Within 24 hours, I got a message from somebody saying that they were the nephew of a modern-day Knights Templar, and if I continued to go down this path, they would come after me, they would find me, and they would kill me. It's on Facebook record. It's in there. I said, okay, that's a rat hole I need not go down at this point. And so I didn't. And I let it lie. But since then, we've got Pizzagate. And where did Pizzagate lead us? The same place that I went down 8 years ago. So it's now public knowledge that this is going on. And who's involved? Well, it's the elites of the world. And then we find out, well, these guys are Satan worshipers. Oh, wait a minute, that guy with the pitchfork again? No, the entity, the interdimensional entity that created the rebellion, more than likely, and as I wrote in Letters to Earth, more than likely they were or are the genetic engineers for the third dimension. Now, when I got to this point of when I was writing a lot of this in Letters to Earth, I knew that they were going to want me dead. And so I can remember this like it was yesterday. I literally took the laptop off my lap and set it down. And I went into a deep meditative prayer. And I went down into Delta. And I'm sorry, down into Theta. Maybe I wound up in Delta because of where we wound up. But when we pray, we usually go into Alpha. Alpha is where we're very relaxed. We bow our heads and we have the mirror of the mind that appears. We can kind of see things here. But when you are in Theta, this becomes what we see here in our mind's eye, becomes the reality of what we experience. And so that's where our consciousness basically leaves the rules of the third dimension and can now span the multiverse. We can go any place, forward or backward in time, into any dimension and see whatever is necessary to see in order to benefit us. That's how we are able to see into the future and witness future events. People saying, oh, you're crazy. Wait a minute. Have you ever said, I knew that was going to happen? Well, if you knew it was going to happen, Own up to it. Or why didn't you change the outcome? Sometimes you have to trust your feelings when we see something and we do not take action because we didn't trust our feelings. We let the logical mind kick in. We have a negative outcome. And so it's that soul level connection that we have back to the Creator, actually, that allows us to maneuver with it, to give us this ability to maneuver, because we are created in His image. We didn't evolve. I guarantee you, animals don't sit around and contemplate traveling the cosmos. Maybe they do. I don't know, but I've never. I can't verify that. Let's put it that way. My guess is that they think about chasing their favorite toy while they're dreaming. But we contemplate changing the planet. We contemplate the cosmos. We contemplate life. There's so many things that we even contemplate our next meal and then go and create it. There's something easy to create, your next meal. You just go see if you have the ingredients, put them together, take action, and voila, you eat. So there's a lot of things that we do that we create each and every day, and we just don't pay attention to the process. Well, it's the same thing. So I knew the danger that I was going to be in here, and I take the laptop down and I set it down and I go into this deep meditative prayer. And I can literally, or I can't, I've done it lots of times, but I literally put myself right before the throne of the Father, right before the throne of Yahweh. And when I do this, the throne is always elevated and Jesus is always to my right, God's left, even though the Bible says sit at my right hand. Well, he's a king now. He doesn't have to sit at the right hand. But that's just what I see. That is my vision. That's how I picture it. That's how my brain can comprehend it. And so this particular time, I made a beseechment. Now, I know the prophecies. I know we're going through this period of judgment called Armageddon, and then we're going to have 1,000 years of peace. And then we have this time when the satanic forces are released, but just for a short while to kind of do the final weeding out, and then we're brought to final perfection for our next step. What's our next step? The scripture says that there will be scrolls opened up, and I'm talking about Revelation, says that new scrolls would be opened up. Now, we get little hints along the way in the Bible, like God named all the stars. Okay, all the stars have names, and we're going to have new scrolls. But I had to know that I could survive whatever was going to be thrown at me. So I literally asked Father Yahweh, and I beseeched him. I said, I need to know that my future is so great and so dynamic that I can live through whatever is thrown at me. Whatever they do, I can live through it. And instantly, I was swept away from before the person of God and taken right across the universe. And I was shown planet after planet after planet after planet, thousands and thousands of what looked to be very Earth-like planets. And we finally slowed down and we stopped it. When I say we, I'm guessing that it was my guardian angel. God didn't take me through a walk through the Garden of Eden. There was another entity that was with me and that was talking to me and showing me these things. And what I was told is, and by the way, what I saw was a beautiful planet. You know how Earth has more yellow and red accents to the greenery that we have? That this planet had a little bit more blue. I like blue. And that's what was there. I thought, wow, this is really cool. And so that's where we were in this process. I'm looking around and I'm told, this is your planet. Everyone on this planet will be one of your descendants. You will populate this planet. Earth is only the beginning. Every person who is brought to this level of perfection, who is restored fully as one of God's children, will have the opportunity of populating their own planet within their own quadrant of space. I'm not talking about, okay, we're just going to move to another planet. I'm talking, no, you get a planet, you get a planet. You want the galaxy? You can have the whole galaxy, because there's hundreds of billions of galaxies out there. And each galaxy's got a lot of planets. And Earth is only the beginning. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. So Earth is where it starts for humans. It doesn't start on Zeta Reticuli 5 or in some other quadrant. It starts right here in our solar system, in the Milky Way, on the third rock from the sun, where God planted his children. Now, you might say, well, wait a minute. That sounds an awful odd. Well, let's just take a look at the way humans are created. A female healthy human is born with approximately 400,000 eggs in her ovaries. Men never stop making sperm. So if you wanted a species to populate planets, you would make them genetically perfect and give them a huge reproductive system so they could carry out that chore. How long would it take a woman to use all those eggs? This is something I wrote in Letters to Earth too. Passing one a month, she would have to live over 35,000 years to use them all. Is this a product of evolution? To have a reproductive system that can populate planets? Think about it. You know, wait a second, we're going to bend science here. We're going to bend it even more. So not only was I shown where we are headed, but the organization behind it. And if we go back to string theory tells us, actually it's M theory, that says our universe was created by two membranes coming together and touching and setting off an electronic discharge, which is going to take about, 1 trillion Earth years to complete. The alpha and the omega. And if we want to go by those time periods, we're 15 billion years into the trip, so we have another 985 billion years to go. So let's talk about this again another 2,000 or 3,000 years, and let's see what happens. Now, interestingly enough, remember I said I was taken from before the throne of God to this planet, and along the way I was shown thousands and thousands and thousands of other planets. It didn't take more than a few seconds to get to wherever we were going. And I don't know where it is. I can't tell you, this is the galaxy, and here's the planet. It revolves around this sun, and I can't tell you where it is. I just know it's there. And I know there's a lot of them there. And so here's the great part. You know, we all want to find a little synchronicity, and a little confirmation is always nice. Now, I'm going to predicate this. I know virtually nothing about the Dead Sea Scrolls. The Dead Sea Scrolls Society is one of the most quiet, hidden societies on the planet. If you try to break in to go see the Dead Sea Scrolls, you will most likely die, just because if you get past the armed guards, if you go in there, they've got alarm systems that release poison gas. There's a pressure system, a heat system, and a laser system. And so depending on where you are, you're going to run into a problem trying to get just to the Dead Sea Scrolls. So what's in these that are so important that they have to guard them with lasers and death gas and armed guards? Well, from time to time, we have some information that gets out. And that's where Dr. Frank Stranges comes in. And something that he had said, that he quoted quite a few things, and it's surprising. And, you know, you get a little taste of it in Ezekiel, if you read the book of Ezekiel, where Ezekiel sees these other creatures, and there's this craft of a wheel within a wheel, and you know that you're dealing with something not of this world, but where does it fit in? And okay, that's a bit of extraterrestrial, but when you read the Dead Sea Scroll version, it goes beyond extraterrestrial, because all sorts of ships show up. It's not just the throne of God that shows up before Ezekiel. And so there's a lot more, evidently, a lot more evidence of, we're dealing with several different species, and some might indeed be flying UFOs. Some might be presenting themselves as UFOs and transforming into humans. We knew by the Book of Enoch that they could take human form. Didn't have very good consequences, because we got the Nephilim, and look at all the things that were created in Greek mythology that may have actually happened in real life, considering what we were dealing with. These sons of God, or the Watchers, which left their place to come to this planet and took human wives for themselves. So we've got all this information. Now, here's the great part. Everybody wants to know, what is our future? What's it all about? Why doesn't anybody tell us? And it's not all that complicated. But we look for evidence. We look for something that else is there, and we look for something that we can, hold as an anchor, hold as a safety line. And one of the things that Dr. Strangers had read in his video that he's done, and Alfred, I'm sure you'll have the link to it already. I know I've posted it on my Facebook page, but it comes out of John, the 14th chapter, and we get a totally different version of this. What it says in typically every Bible is, every translation, John 14:2 says, in the house, and this is Jesus speaking, or the entity we call Jesus, in the house of my Father there are many abodes. The King James translation, many others use the word mansions. Wait a minute. My Father's house has many mansions? And he goes on to say, otherwise I would have told you, because I am going my way to prepare a place for you. Also, if I go my way and prepare a place for you, I am coming again and will receive you home to myself. Now, he's saying, I'm going to go prepare a place for you, and then I'm going to come back. I'm going to get you, and you guys are going to be with me. Okay. Now, there's two applications that go here. Jesus was talking to, at this point, his 12 disciples, and that grows into what is called the little flock. But there are other sheep which are talked about, and that is everybody else. The meek shall inherit the earth, and the rest of the third dimension. But in the Dead Sea Scrolls, what I just read to you, instead of where it says that Jesus is going to go away to prepare a place, it says, in your universe, which I have created, there are a multitude of places and orbs along with the earth will be your future. Will be your future dwelling places. Got that? I'll read it again. There are a multitude of places and orbs along with the earth that will be your future dwelling places. You mean planets just like Earth? How about that? He said, I have prepared many places for you to visit and also places for you to dwell in the future. When the time is ripe, you shall know that I have already made a way for you to be transformed, and then you shall dwell with me in those other places. In that manner, we shall never be apart again, for I shall be with you always. One of the things that I was told is that we will have the ability to transform or travel from one planet to another planet and going across the whole universe. Something we know is that our thoughts are instantaneous. Interestingly enough, Dr. Mikio Kaku, I helped him find God in an offbeat way, but he came up with tachyons, which is a particle that travels faster than the speed of light, which is indeed instantaneous. And so we can project ourselves, and the theory is of modern science and how the brain works, we can project our thoughts to any place and time and be there instantaneously and see what's there. The theory is you can take somebody and put them on the other side of the universe, and you can have a thought and they can receive that thought instantaneously. So when we are given the ability to travel, we will take our thoughts and go to the place that we wish to be, and we'll go alpha, theta, delta, boom, physically there, come right back up, and we are where we are. Same way when we want to come back, you close your mind, you go down and see where you want to go, see ya. We will be creating our own wormholes to travel across the universe without the need of any kind of spaceships or any kind of transportation devices, no windows, no portals. It's all right here, right within, not our literal brain, but within our consciousness, that we have the ability to do it. Picture this. Picture going to the place that you were at your last vacation. Sorry about that. Picture that place. And then you can be there in a second. You have that instant memory of where you were. Picture a place in the future that you want to go. Think about it. You know, if you go to a travel agency, pick up a travel brochure and say, wow, well, yeah, like we go to travel agencies anymore. Boy, didn't I just date myself, Alfred? Go online and go see where you want to go travel to. And you know, you can literally sit there and picture yourself being on the beach. If you close your eyes and think about it, you smell the sand and the surf. You can feel the sun against your skin. And you pick up that glass. It's a nice tropical cold drink. And it's like, you can taste it. Wait a minute. None of it's really there. It's all here. Didn't Jesus transform water into wine, feed thousands with leftovers, control the weather, walk on water, heal the sick? Yeah, and he said that you will do greater things than I do. Like travel the universe in the idea of, what do you say? We go visit the kids over in the next solar system, honey. Okay, well, let's go. Bang, you're there. It's just that simple. Life is not complicated. And here's the biggest secret, Alfred. Here's the biggest secret. What they don't want us to know is that we are children of God, at least a good portion of us, and I'll explain this in a second. Once we catch on that we have this ability, it's like letting the cat out of the bag. Oh, geez, you give one kid a lollipop, now they all want a lollipop. Well, we deserve lollipops, so hand them over. If they taught this stuff, instead of us having to find and dig for it, we could transform this whole world. If we started a program in kindergarten and taught advanced technologies, brain technologies, psychic technologies to children in kindergarten, and then taught them all the way through, we could transform this planet in one generation, wipe out the evil completely. But you got to wipe out the evil to put the program into place. So it's a catch-22 situation. It's a good thing that Jesus says, I'll be back. I'll be back. You see, if indeed that is our future, and I still use the word if because it's a lot easier for people to deal with if. However, we have to turn the if into life. IFLIFE. So once we take that if it is our future, then we give it energy. Then we give it life. Just like we have energy, we transmute that energy to what our intention is. And when we transmute that energy into whatever it is that we desire, what happens? Don't we usually attain what we desire? Whether it's a cheese sandwich or to go someplace on vacation or to set a goal for ourselves. As long as we are willing to put the time and effort into it, we will accomplish it. And so that's pretty much where we are. You know, we're finding all this stuff out at the 11th hour, so to speak. And with the things that we have going on with the world around us, the general society is like, well, Trump's going to save us. And if Trump doesn't save us, the aliens will save us. And if the aliens don't save us, God help us. Well, why don't we just go to God right to begin with? Take ownership of being children of Yahweh. You know, two things that I have seen disparaged and tremendously in the last 10 years. Our personal rights as people and God's name, the name of Yahuwah or Yahweh, Jehovah. I've seen flow charts where he's now an Anunnaki god in subjugation to Anu. And really it's Anu who's taken over. Well, let's see. Which would you rather have? I'll go back to what I said before. Information in the scriptures which says that we're the children of God and that we will inherit the earth, not just the earth, but the third dimension. Or let's go listen to the Anunnaki version where it says that you are all slaves working for an elite class mining gold for us. And we'll move you off of planet Earth when we're ready. Which is more appealing to you, Alfred? You know? Well, one is set in love. The other one is set in slavery. What do we have on this planet now? Do we have more love or do we have more slavery? And when you're thinking about that, folks, think about the fact that there are 35 million people being trafficked, humanly trafficked around the world, mostly caught up in the slave industry. 8 million of those are children that nobody is ever going to see again. 500,000 of them are right from the United States itself. Never see them again. And now all this stuff is starting to bubble up and come forth. And we're starting to hear stories of almost 10,000 sealed indictments that are be going out to somebody or other. We don't know who. They're sealed. Pizzagate got a slam shut, but we're seeing pedophile busts at the street level because we're not seeing anybody really big. We're seeing more of Hillary Clinton's cronies mysteriously being suicided or dying of strange causes or just outrightly being shot. We're seeing a president that has never had to face such a backlash by Congress and the American public. It makes you wonder, how did he get to be president in the first place? He wasn't part of the swamp. He wasn't a politician. He was a businessman. He was somebody who bought and sold politicians and bankers. Ooh. Somebody who bought and sold politicians and bankers. And yeah, he did. He did. I worked for a company who went up against Donald Trump when I was in another life back in New York State, and he lobbied Congress better than the company that I worked for did. And I'm talking about the state Congress in New York, not the United States Congress, but it was all over casinos, and they wanted to build a casino, and Donald Trump, they got one down in Atlantic City. You boys don't need one. How much money do you need for your reelection? We're buying some politicians here. And that project never happened. So he bought and sold politicians for 40 years, never was one, but he is one now. And that's why they're all worried. There's another reason why he's worried. And it's the main reason why I left to go off grid. And that is this. And folks, go online and start looking at the interviews that Alfred and I have started doing since July of 2013. And you'll see the vast majority of the stuff that we have talked about has happened, or it's going to happen, or in process of happening. We've gotten a lot of things right. And this goes back to, 2013. Remember, we were supposed to have the Mayan end of the world in 2012, 12/21/21. 12/21/12, sorry about that. But that didn't happen. But what they did predict, they said, oh, we forgot to carry the 0 year or some crazy thing like that. It was actually, they recalculated it to December 17th. I think it was the 17th that they said that they were supposed to have the alignment. And then we got Comet Ison. And Comet Ison went around the back of the sun and virtually disappeared. And we never got to see the sign and the Mayan sign in the sky of Quetzalcoatl, the snake god. It was destroyed. Instead, what we got was 10 days of Mandela, and out of that, an alleged signing of treaties with an off-planet entity known as Marduk, who was the chief god of the Babylonians. And it said that the only country that did not sign that treaty was Israel. Why would Israel sign a god with a world power that had them held captive? That's kind of crazy. They'd be held captive again, right? So that's the only country, as I understand, that did not sign that treaty. And let's go back and look at Mandela again. Allegedly, he died in prison, but then he got out of prison, and then he was supposed to have died on, I believe, was the 26th of June, 2013. Only he didn't die when they took him off life support. He got better, and they sent him home, only to die on December 5th. And so then we get this 10 days of a world of Mandela, where every fake news agency and whatever real news agencies there may be were carrying this thing for 10 days. Why were they carrying the Nelson Mandela funeral for 10 days? Must have been awfully important for man to be carrying it for 10 days. You start looking at it. Why was Obama standing next to a crazy man who claimed to be seeing angels flying around the stadium where they were holding the the funeral or the eulogy for Mandela, and then they find out that this guy, he's signing in a language that nobody on earth can read, a sign language. Nobody who knows American Sign Language or any other country's sign language, they just can't read it. And he's also been linked to what they call necktie murders in South Africa. That's taking somebody, tying them to like a telephone pole, putting a tire around their neck and lighting it on fire. So why was this guy standing next to the president? It makes you wonder once you start examining all this stuff. And then out of that, what did we get? We got, right after Mandela's funeral, we got a revolution in Ukraine that went hot. I was there for the first revolution in 2004. That wasn't bad. That was one step removed from 11. I didn't see any violence whatsoever, and I was there for a month. We had the false flag Ebola outbreak in Africa, and then the beginning of the year, we got news of this terrorist organization called ISIS. And we made all these connections together, and we've been bringing it together ever since. Trump comes into office, all of a sudden, ISIS is out of business. We had a refugee problem of all these refugees being brought into Europe and brought into the United States. We got a year of extraordinary mercy by the Pope to bring these refugees in. It's basically a reverse holy wars which has taken place. There just isn't an outright war going on yet. But we've heard a lot of negative things about these Islamic areas in Europe that are just totally taken over, and they're implementing Sharia law. Different judges have been in the United States Trump has gotten rid of them for trying to implement or advocating the implementation of Sharia law. So you look at Obama wasn't Christian. Obama turned around, sold us out. And who did he sell us out to? Well, we're going to look at this a little bit deeper because it's setting us up with the next prophecy. We've reported before that every president since Ronald Reagan has been a Knight of Malta, which automatically makes them a subject of the Pope. They're above the law of the land, just like the feudal knights were. They were only answerable to the king. They were given their areas that their knighthood allowed them to control. And so the Vatican has several different knighthoods, but we're going to focus on the Knight of Malta here. Reagan, Daddy Bush, Bill Clinton, Bush Jr., all Knights of Malta, and Obama had a letter of endorsement from the Knights of Malta. He was not a Knight of Malta himself. So we can pretty much figure that the past presidents were all agents of the Pope planting the deep state. Now think about that. Hillary was supposed to take over, and then you would have still had the Vatican control of the White House. Oh, well, what are you talking about, Peter? What are you talking about, Mr. Kling? Well, wait a minute. Let's go back to 2015, and we talked about this because it was the tail end of the Tetrad blood moons. We talked about that too. The Tetrad blood moons started 4/4/14. Oh, and by the way, on 3/13/13, something that I predicted as well, we got a Jesuit pope, an illegal pope. Tie this in here in just a second. These blood moons end in 2015 in September. And what did we see in the United States in the end of September 2015? We saw the Pope, an illegal Pope, a Jesuit Pope, standing in America's holy places. He was at the White House, he was at the Capitol, and he was at Independence Hall, all of America's holy places. Well, what do you mean? America was founded on separation of church and state. Why was the Pope standing before Congress telling our U.S. Congress what to do? Why was he giving out marching orders to everybody except who? The Speaker of the House, who wasn't about to march. He broke into tears and he resigned on the spot after the Pope's speech. And I'm talking about John Bonner. He resigned right after the Pope gave his speech to Congress. So there was one honest person in all of Congress who wanted no part of what the Pope's mission was to Congress or to the rest of the world, which we got in the post-2015 development agenda. That was spurred from a 41-page treatise issued on October 2nd, 2013 by, quote, His Holiness the Pope himself, an illegal pope that has helped set up this deep state, along with those who answer to the Pope, who are financially gaining by it. And now start asking all the questions about Bill and Hillary. Yeah, Knights of Malta, which have raped this country and have set up a program. Then you got Daddy Bush didn't last too long. They were just getting the program set up. But then you got Bush Jr., and we got 9/11 and the Patriot Act. He went right along with the whole scam. He didn't care. He was too busy chopping brush down on his ranch in Texas. He liked chopping brush. Didn't have to argue with anything that he was chopping down. That was his face. Every time they interviewed Bush Jr., he was cutting his brush, and he must have had one heck of a overgrown backyard. That's all I can say. Always cutting brush. But he found his level in life. He was a gardener and not a president. As a president, he was nothing more than a pawn for the Vatican to carry out their plan and continue to plant the deep state to take America down a path it was never intended to go. And that's why I predicted a year before last, that Trump would be elected president and we would have the Brexit vote. And that was based on biblical prophecy of Revelation, in Revelation, the 13th chapter, where it talks about the false prophet. No, the false prophet is not the Pope. The false prophet is a beast, which automatically makes it a government, and it's a two-horned beast. So it has two ruling kingdoms. Let's see. The final world power is the United States and England, ruled from two places, London and Washington, D.C., which are both city-states above the law of the land in which they reside. Another interesting setup. So we've got these layers, and by the way, the third city-state is the Vatican, above the law of the land in which it resides. So three city-states that work together here. Three sides. That's why I gave a little Illuminati symbol, three sides. That's why you see that. That's also why that there's an obelisk that stands in St. Peter's Square, what they would call a pillar to Baal, only this time it's an Egyptian obelisk. So it's Ra's penis that stands in the Vatican, and it stands in London. And the biggest one of all stands right in Washington, D.C. They call it the Washington Monument. But it's a penis to the god Ra. It's what it is. Call it what it is. So America's hung. What can I tell you? We got the biggest one. And so that's what makes this country so important. And when we look at the prophecy, America will stand right up to the end as its own individual country. It's not going to be sucked into the UN. We saw that happen here with Nikki Haley and this vote against Trump. Even the UN's voting against Trump. When we go to Revelation, the 13th chapter, and it talks about this two-horned wild beast that can even call down fire from the heavens, like nuclear fire, or maybe like that laser fire that we saw burning up all the homes in California. Yeah, let's not forget about that. Very selective forest fire or wildfire that only burns homes and leaves trees intact. So we have to look at what we're dealing with. But here, this beast that literally calls down fire from heaven creates or makes an image to this first beast. It makes an image to what is the United Nations, and it breathes life into this image. And this beast takes over, and it creates the beast system that receives the man's number of 666. If you don't have that number, you cannot buy or sell. And by the way, everybody's freaking out. Oh, 666, 666. Let me see something here. I'm going to hold this up. I don't know if you can see it, but there's a barcode there. You see there's two lines on one end, there's two lines in the middle, and there's two lines on the other end. Both of those, or I say all three sets of lines, they took the numbers away from them. The reason why is those lines represent 6. So it should read on the old barcodes, it used to read 666 on every single barcode. If it doesn't have a UPC code, you cannot buy or sell. Go to Walmart and try to buy something that doesn't have a UPC code attached to it. Good luck. I hope you really want it badly. But anyway, so the mark of the beast is already here. However, we haven't received a chip in our hands. We've received one on our credit cards now, so you got to plug the chip in. We have moved to a cashless society, even though we have cash. That's going to go away if we hear what's going on. But this brings us to where we are with the president. We foretold Trump would be the president. Why? Because in order to continue to do what needs to be done, Hillary wasn't going to do it. Hillary would have only made the situation worse. It would have continued to emasculate the United States and turn around and make our population one big homogenous, boneless, or one big homogenous population with no backbone. Which makes it, once you have that, it's easy to take everybody's guns, but nobody's going to come into the United States and start demanding their guns, at least nobody who has them legally, and expect to disarm America, because you got 100 million legal gun owners in the United States, and guns are like potato chips. Everybody's got more than one. So try to disarm an army of 100 million strong that's pretty much armed to the teeth. It ain't going to work. So forget the UN. That ain't happening. They have to create some other situation. But it's not going to happen the way that they believe. Now, we're going to see some chaos, because if what Trump is doing, if I see what's happening, if this happens, if he starts taking out the people in the deep state who have been working against him, who are all seem to have some sort of a tie or connection right back to child and human trafficking, which interestingly enough goes right up to the Vatican. And we know that by past interviews with a lot of people like Kevin Annett, but not just having to interview people like Kevin. We have a history of it. We've got it documented within the news. The Vatican has paid out. Hey, Congress had paid out, what, $15 million as hush money to keep all the people that they didn't treat properly quiet. The Vatican has paid out almost $4 billion in settlement money for children that were found out about, which were molested by representatives of the church. Now think about that. Almost $4 billion they've paid out. So when we look at the plague that is child trafficking, molestation, and sacrifice, you have to look at an organization that runs orphanages all around the world. And indeed, there's a lot of missing kids from a lot of Catholic orphanages, and they're finding their bones in the backyard or in other places where they've been disposed of. So it's an evil organization run by evil people who have no regard for human life. And so that's why in Revelation you have 2 chapters that are dedicated to the end of this religious entity that really was established by the Anunnaki. All religions today can be traced right back to ancient Samaria and the Anunnaki. Do the research. I don't care what religion you are. The only one that you can't would be Hebrew. And I'm not talking about Zionist, I'm talking about Jewish Hebrew, which they trace their roots right back to Abraham and the Abrahamic covenant. And that's the only one that is separate. All the rest can trace their roots all the way back to the Anunnaki. Christ didn't come here to establish a religion, so why do we have, over 30,000, I think it's actually approaching 40,000 flavors of Christianity? What the heck is that? How many ways can you cut up Christ? That makes no sense. There was one message. That message was, you should love Yahweh your God with your whole heart, soul, and mind, and you must love your neighbor as you do yourself. Love puts us in the state of alpha. Love takes us out of that beta fight and flight syndrome, or it's actually a response, not a syndrome, it's a response. But alpha is where we experience love. Alpha is where we start creating our futures. Alpha is where we relax, we meditate. We like being in alpha as humans. We don't have to react to anything. We can do things at our leisure. There is no hate in alpha. You can dislike things, but you're not going to be have that experience of total disgust and hate. So we're in for a transformation. What we're seeing right now is very possibly in this taking down of the deep state is to unplant everything that the past presidents have put in, particularly Trump. Particularly Clinton. And Trump is trying to extract all this. Clinton started it. Obama seems to have had, since he's been, that was the last president, been there for 8 years, and something that, and I wrote this in Letters to Earth, I knew it was going to happen. Before the Obama presidency, I didn't really think that we had much of a race issue in this country. You know, I didn't experience any racial hatred. I don't have any racial hate for anybody. Wow. How do you elect a black president and why, and have him racially divide the country, but not just along racial lines, across gay, lesbian, bisexual, transsexual, whatever sexual you want to choose lines? How do you create so much chaos within a country that used to be united? You know? So you have to look at the evil from where it comes. And so Trump is fighting this. And if all these people are involved in child trafficking, it's the most lucrative business there is on the planet. It outruns drugs. And so everybody's getting their beak wet, so to speak. If Trump's not knocking down the drug companies and the processing plants like we're hearing, and when I say the drug companies are in trouble. They are facing lawsuits from almost every municipality in the United States is going to get on top of this one. This is going to be bigger than when the tobacco companies were sued, because by their own research, the drug companies have misrepresented the use of opiates, whether they are name brand or generic brand. They were misused. And the drug companies knew it, and they allowed the United States to become addicted. They addicted the United States. So there's a lot more that goes on behind the scenes there, and we're going to watch this unfold too. Whether how much Trump had to do with this, I don't know, but Hillary's last two good friends that had a connection to a drug company that was supposed to supply drugs to the people in Haiti, I guess they both just committed suicide because they were found hanged in their palatial house, and these people were billionaires. Boy, they just didn't have any more to live for, Alfred. You know, they had everything. They just didn't have any more to live for. They hanged themselves. So you look at all of this lawlessness, and that's where it brings us, because the general population has come to know that there's a double set of standards. There's a set of standards for the elite of the world, and there's a set of standards for everybody else. And like I said, the Knights of Malta only have to answer to the Pope. He's the king. The rest of us are the serfdom, the peasants that are just useless feeders. And that's how we're looked at. And so we're pitted against each other, just the same as you would a dog fight or a chicken fight, just at the next level. Let's buy them arms and they'll kill each other. What was it? They told Hiram Maxim, I forgot who was it, told Hiram Maxim, build a better way for Europeans to slaughter each other and you'll be a millionaire. You know, and he invented the Maxim machine gun, which turned into a heck of a weapons industry. And so now we spend trillions of dollars a year killing each other and destroying the planet. How can this evil be allowed to exist? And you see, this must be destroyed. So what we are seeing now is most likely a fulfillment of what is written in 2 Thessalonians, the 2nd chapter. It's the exposing of the man of lawlessness. And when you read this seems to go all the way up right to the Pope, because it's talking about a man who puts himself in a God's position and calls himself a God. Isn't the Pope supposed to be God's representative and God's face on earth, so to speak? But yeah, he is. And he's an illegal Pope, not by what I say, but by the church the church's own doctrine. Jesuits are not supposed to be popes. It's just that simple. So here, you've got an illegal pope running a bunch of illegal knights that are fleecing the people in the countries in which they live, and they have no legal recourse to have any sort of indictment written against them. And so we got things like Uranium One and Benghazi and the child trafficking that goes back and forth, and these people just sit back and they don't do anything, but they laugh and they create more chaos by controlling the fake news that doesn't report any of this stuff. And Trump's just like undermining the bridge. He's just working 20 hours a day, just doing his thing, sending out his tweets, making everybody more upset. Let's see. He passed one great bill. He passed an executive order, I guess, what was it, on the 21st? That lets the government seize any or block any and all assets of people that carry out crimes against humanity. Think about that. Child trafficking. And you can take that right to anything that you want. But it's like softly written. So you can actually be accused of starting a riot, George Soros, or funding companies that will start riots at your command, George Soros, who supposedly had a heart attack. There's another story that says he's in custody. It might be in Guantanamo, Cuba. So this is starting to happen. If he had a heart attack, oh well. I'd rather him be arrested in Guantanamo. And hopefully we'll see the rest of these people go one by one, and we can say goodbye to them all as the man of lawlessness is exposed. This could lead to the next major prophecy, and that is the end of the church itself. Because if you have a case of pedophilia that you can build from the ground up and take it right back to the Vatican, and by the way, if you look into the Pope's history, while he was a priest back in Argentina, he was named in a child trafficking case. I read the newspaper clip that was posted, which exposed the whole thing. It used to be online. They probably scrubbed the internet, and you might not be able to find it anymore. But I remember reading it and then posting it onto Facebook. But yes, he wasn't accused. He was mentioned in a case having to do with child trafficking. He also was key in putting the arms deal together, which allowed Argentina to purchase Exocet missiles from France, which were used on the British ships during the Falkland Island Wars. So nice guy, our Pope. He's got that background. He's involved where the cash is, arms and children. So this gets exposed, the church is going down. And that is the next major prophecy after this one. So we've got time. We're going to see this. It's going to be fun. It'll be exciting. People will be freaking out. And Alfred, you and I will be sitting back saying, uh-huh. Told you it was coming. Yep, all the alien friends aren't going to be here to help us out on this one. This is one that we're going to be snatched out of the jaws of death, so to speak, because we will have aliens, trust me. But right now, the alien forces that we have, which are the rebels here, that's why Earth is a prison planet. It's those rebels that have been requiring live child sacrifice, and it's their minions, if we can call it that. They're those who are the elite of the world, who are known to be Satan worshipers, who carry on this practice. This all gets exposed. They're not going to be happy, and they're going to come after us. And that's when we can expect our liberation to take place.
Could I ask you, who is behind keeping the secret of the Dead Sea Scrolls, of John the 14:2, that is, of the populated universe, of the planets? Who is keeping that secret? Who gave the death threats to Dr. Frank's
Well, I can't tell you who was behind the actual death threats, but it's not so much who's behind keeping the secrets. It's that they release information. This is all done by, I guess it's the Dead Sea Scrolls Society. That there's an actual name. It's
Yeah.
one of the most secret societies on the planet, and it's them. It's not just any. It's not the Israeli government, or you can't say that it's the Israeli government or the U.S. government or the British government. It's a society. It's a group of academics and scientists who make up this group who decide what gets disseminated and what doesn't. I'm sure that take a look at Zaharia Hawass and what happened with the Sphinx. Dr. Robert Schoch said, "Hey, there's a chamber down there 25 meters underground and it's got stuff in it." Totally denied for years by Zaharia Hawass. And even when they found the cave, it was denied that they found anything in it. I shouldn't say when they found it, when they excavated it, they still claimed that there was nothing in it. And Schoch said, "Hey, we know that there's something in it because we can see it coming back on the radar,
Right.
the ground penetrating radar."
Yeah.
So whatever was in that cave, or whatever was in that tomb, vanished. So who was behind that? We don't know.
Yeah. Now there's the Dead Sea Scroll Society, which is an academic, and so there's nothing. But there is a religious body which is secret called the Sanhedrin.
Well, yeah, that was. We can go right back to the days of Jesus, and
Yeah.
it's mentioned constantly in the Bible.
Which Napoleon prohibited them, and which is still active. Now, you can, so what I'm thinking is that it seems to me that to have deadly force around keeping that secret, that there has been an intervention and a kind of an appropriation of the Dead Sea Scrolls.
Oh, without a doubt.
By a Sanhedrin connected force that is separate from. This is a hypothesis that I'm putting out, so that you have the Dead Sea Scrolls Society and all the scholars who came together to study that and who made discoveries, and that then at some point there's an intervention of a national security nature, which is a similar military nature as the Jesuits.
Sure.
And it's a Sanhedrin type that's connected, and to me, Jesuit is as negative a word as Sanhedrin is a negative a word.
Absolutely. And you can tie in, we can bring this all together.
Yeah.
Between, if we look at the first century Jewish Sanhedrin, it was essentially a court of the priests that just dictated the laws.
Yeah.
And so they would refer back to the prophecies. I mean, these weren't just idiots. These were guys who knew the prophecies, and they would go back there and they would say, okay, well, yeah, they were saying this about Jesus. Well, he fits the prophecy, and he does come from the town of David, but they couldn't accept him because he wasn't one of them. He didn't come from the higher ranking or the legitimate, what they felt to be the legitimate heirs. It weren't from their ranks.
Right. And that currently, if the Dead Sea Scrolls were made public, the Sanhedrin, they still face their problem.
They've got the same problem all over again.
Yeah, all over again. And that's why it's being held secret. And that's why Dr. Frank Strages was threatened with assassination. And that is an evil force. That, let me say this,
Oh, yeah.
That isn't, you know, that is an evil force that we face on this planet at this time, which is anti-Christic. I mean, I've just got to say,
Absolutely.
yeah.
It absolutely
So,
is.
so it is. Now, I have had, and every personal interaction that I've had with Donald Trump has been positive, and the only personal interaction that I have had happened quite serendipitously, which was around the time that he announced for the presidency. I was on Twitter and he was on Twitter, and we're a bunch of doing a bunch of Twitters, and I tweeted something and some people tweeted something, and he said to the other Twitters and said, "Did you understand what he just said?" And I said to myself, God, this guy really is pretty hip, because he understood some pretty amazing stuff that I was talking about. So I saw that he was a very intelligent guy, because up until that point, I didn't know anything about him. And so, I'm not making any political statement, any political opinions, statements about him now, other than my one interaction with him is that he showed me that he has a multidimensional understanding. Trump does.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
I have no doubt about that.
Yeah, no, right. However, the Sanhedrin, so that let's distinguish Trump from the Sanhedrin, because it seems to me that those actions of putting a lethal force guarding the deep scrolls, that is a Sanhedrin type action, which it seems to me, if you trace it, comes from the Sanhedrin through the Mossad down to those, lethal gas, et cetera, et cetera. And that is anti-Christic. It is, if there is an antichrist force, that's it.
Well, we know that exists, Alfred, and we don't have.
Yeah. So no, but wait. So that the antichrist force manifests not only in the church, but it manifests in the Sanhedrin. That's my point.
Absolutely, it does.
And I know I'm pushing it here. I mean, I'm really pushing up against it. That church may be the whore of Babylon, but isn't the Sanhedrin the Antichrist?
Okay. Yeah. Yes. Let's examine this.
I'm kind of, we're sort of having a hermeneutical conversation here.
I'm going to kind of let you almost answer your own question here.
Yeah.
We know that the Sanhedrin existed back during Jesus' day because he was battling it. Now, Jesus said that there wouldn't be a stone left upon a stone, talking about the temple.
Yeah.
And they felt that was a blasphemous thing. And so that, they kept on trying to get him on blasphemy against, the law. But he knew the law better, as good or if not better than they did. But it was actually when he said that he would tear down the temple and rebuild it in 3 days, that was enough. Now they had to get him off the scene. Now, Jesus told that system was going to end. He said that the temple was going to be destroyed, and he said, when you see these things happen, leave Judea and flee to the mountains. And what actually came about was the Roman armies coming in 67 CE, and then for some reason they left, and then General Titus came back in 70, razed the city, killed about 2 million Jews, and took 93,000 captive back to Rome. The people who he took captive back to Rome were the elite class of the Jewish Empire at that time. They were all there for Passover. That's how he was able to capture the city so full. They would have been the ones that would have been living there, and they would have had been the best supplied. They had the food stores there. When Rome laid siege to the city, whatever secret documents they had, the secret scrolls, were buried under the Temple Mount. We know that because the first thing the Knights Templar did was, when they got back to the Middle East, is kill everybody in Jerusalem and start digging. There's only one way they could have known that there was something worth digging for, and that was if their ancestors let them know. Now, what most people don't know is that by the end of the first century, there were virtually no Jewish slaves left in Rome. They had all bought their way out of slavery and had joined European society. So by the time you have 1,000 years come by for the Holy Wars, they've already assimilated into European society at all different levels. Watch the movie Ivanhoe. You can be entertained and see the Jewish influence or the Hebrew influence during the medieval time period. Ivanhoe was said at the time. I guess King Richard gets kidnapped is the story, and the Hebrews have enough gold to free him, so they're used in that. But they went during the days of the Knights Templar. They literally, in the 300 years time period that they were in power, actually it's a little over two, they transformed Europe from wood into stone. And they created the middle class, and they became the second most powerful entity next to the church up until the church disbanded them. Why? Because they were all part of they were all part of the knighthoods. They were above the law of the land, and it took the Pope. King Philip the Fair couldn't even disband them. It took the Pope to give an order to disband the knighthood, and the rest is history. However, look at the symbol of the Knights Templar: 2 riders, 1 horse, and we'll just take some simple history. The Knights Templar are credited for creating our banking system, or as I like to call it, the bankster system. And who runs it today? The Jesuits and the Zionists. So you still have 2 riders on the same horse. It's the same dollar. And that's where we are. It's fiat currency that's used to control the world by who? The Zionists and the Jesuit banksters. Now, let me clearly state that Zionists are not true Hebrew or Jewish, so don't come back to me and say, oh, Kling's anti-Semitic, because he's not. I grew up in a mostly Jewish neighborhood when I was a kid, and I had friends that were Jewish. It's like one of my favorite stories is my parents were friends with a couple who were Orthodox Jews. My parents were Christian. And the interesting thing, this couple had hired a woman to be their governess for their children. She was Persian from Iran. So we all had dinner together one time, and so here you had Jew, Christian, and Persian or Islam sitting down at one table eating dinner. As a matter of fact, my sister's middle name was given to her because of my mother meeting this Persian woman. Jaleh was her name. My mother fell in love with the name and named my sister after her. So it's just interesting. And that's the way it should be. We should all be able to get along to break the bread at one table. So I don't want to hear he's prejudiced or anti-Semitic. No. The people who are prejudiced and anti-Semitic are generally the first ones that bring it up. So I'm making my defense before anybody says anything about it. Anti-Zionist? Yes. Anti-Zionist? Absolutely. Anti-church? Yes. Anti-religion? Yes. Anti-Jesuit? Yes. Yes. But I ain't prejudiced. The only thing I'm prejudiced against is ignorance. People who choose to remain ignorant. Can't handle that. But outside of that, yeah, I've got the things that I don't like, but it's because they are all sided with the enemy forces. And us who are God's children, and we'll take this right back to creation. The first prophecy is in Genesis 3:15, where Yahweh is talking to the serpent, and he says, I will put enmity between your seed and the woman's seed, and he will bruise you in the head, you will bruise him in the heel, talking about the Messiah or Jesus. So we have those two seeds. We've got reptilian seed and we've got God's woman seed, two genetic strains that are mentioned. And so we have people that they are enlightened and they wake up and they say, yes, the words he says resonate with me. He's right. I got to listen to this. And you've got people that say, oh, this is just a bunch of crap. I'm going to go back to my child sacrificing ways. It's kind of extreme there, but yeah, it's whatever they're going to do in order to, because it just doesn't resonate with them. They don't have part of that woman's genome or that woman's seed that was passed down from generation to generation from the time of Adam through Noah, through Abraham, and then disseminated through whatever parts of the family to where we get it today. So that's why some of us are very much awake and others are totally asleep and in denial. It all comes down to our genes, what genes are active. And so embrace it. Embrace the enlightenment that we're finding. Embrace these things. And when we see the government start being taken apart, say, hey, we're getting closer. We're getting closer to where we'll have our DNA brought back to perfection. We're getting closer to where we will get rid of the satanic system of evil. We will be getting closer to becoming family with each other, but just not with each other. We will have our heavenly family as well. Right now, we've got enemies. We've got to get rid of the enemies. Once we get rid of the enemies, then it's all friends. And then it's friends and family. And you see, we are all part of one big cosmic family. And that's the secret they don't want us to know. They want us to think that we evolved from the apes, that we were not created in God's image, that we don't have that spiritual capacity, that we don't have that intelligence. We're just a bunch of dumb apes that swing from trees, bottom feeding.
Right. And so that's my point. It seems to me that the case, Frank Strange's case, and the case of the Dead Sea Scrolls, the culprit, the evidence points to the Sanhedrin,
yes,
and the Mossad sitting on the evidence.
That's basically what I wrote in Letters to Earth.
Yeah. And so they are the culprits, and they are the culprits. And so this is where it becomes very confusing. You see, this is where it becomes very confusing.
Well, let's clear up the confusion.
No, but wait,
Go ahead.
Let's go. Because who's to say that the Sanhedrin didn't make Trump an offer he couldn't refuse about the embassy? You see what I'm saying?
Alfred,
I mean, it just depends.
Juxtaposition.
You see, you can see things through all kinds of lenses.
Yep.
And the fact is that his daughter is married to a man. His son-in-law is married to a faction that is probably really close to the Sanhedrin and to those parties that would be involved in this cosmic cover-up. I mean, I
agree. Two riders on the horse.
Yeah. And so what I'm saying is this: when I looked at that move to the embassy, the move of the embassy, I saw it as, they made him an offer he couldn't refuse.
Well, not quite that. Yeah. The Jesuits, the Sanhedrin kicked out the Jesuits of the White House, and it's the Sanhedrin in the White House calling the shots now. I'm sorry. You got it. You got it.
And I'm
you
not,
got it.
And I'm not happy with the Sanhedrin being in the White House, is what I'm saying.
You got it.
Yeah. Now, the problem is this, is that the Jesuits being in the White House is bad enough, but the point is separation of church and state. So if you have the Sanhedrin calling the shots in the White House, where it's just as bad, because
Let's go back to 2015.
yeah.
Only March this time. Do you remember who spoke before Congress in March? Benjamin Netanyahu.
Yeah.
He beat the Pope to the punch. So there were seeds planted there as well.
Yeah.
So, but the Pope gave not just the White House, or I should say, not just the Congress. The Pope gave marching orders to the world. So before the Sanhedrin can turn around and totally come to grips with everything, according to prophecy, the man of lawlessness needs to be exposed. So we expose the man of lawlessness. What's next? The taking down of the church. And so it's a 1-2 punch. And yes, I agree. Obviously, the things that Trump has done since his presidency have all been contrary to what the Pope has edicted to the Obama, and what he has carried out on behalf of the Clintons to make them money. So it's been one big money-making scheme, one big mafioso scheme up to this point. And I've said this quite a while, the two riders on the one horse, one rider is trying to kick the other rider off, and that's what we see happening now. So you're 100% correct.
Yeah. And now we have the Sanhedrin in the White House, and they're the ones that ordered the murder of Jesus, is what I'm saying. And they are let me finish. And they're continuing the cover-up of the Dead Sea Scrolls, and that's a cosmic cover-up.
Yep.
And that's a cover-up of the mission of Jesus. So that's horrible. And then if you want to get into the politics of it, their Secretary of the Interior had just opened up public lands for development, which, as an environmentalist, which I am, is like, that's politics. But,
don't worry about it. It's all going to change.
But let's get back to the cosmic cover-up of the Dead Sea Scrolls. To me, so you had a shift of the Jesuits got kicked out, but it was a Sanhedrin that got kicked out.
Well, yeah, you see, that's...
Put it this way. Even though Trump went to Fordham, his daughter and his son-in-law brought in the Sanhedrin and his lawyer, who, like, it's like the Sanhedrin own him, and they own the U.S. now.
Well, like I said, Trump has bought and sold banksters and politicians, and now, it might be payback time. Who knows? I'm not going to say anybody's controlling Trump.
But the cover-up of those Dead Sea Scrolls,
yeah, if that was made public,
is anti-Christic. So
yes,
yeah. Now, so isn't Trump the lawless man? Isn't Trump the lawless one?
Not yet.
Uh-huh.
Because what has to happen is that Trump is exposing the lawlessness.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, there's no direct prophecy that I can identify and say, oh, this is directly to Donald Trump. Some people have referred to him as Cyrus, and that's not the case. Cyrus released the Jews from Babylonian captivity, way back whenever it was. But it was the Medes and the Persians, who were the Fourth World Empire, who defeated Babylon and released the Jews to go back to Israel. When Trump came into office, the Jews were already in Israel. Trump hasn't done anything to repatriate any Jews. All he's doing is moving the capital from one city to another. And historically speaking, even though the Holy Land has not been continuously occupied by Jews for 2,000 years, it has been historically the homeland of the Jews, and Jerusalem just happens to be the capital, the home city of David. I should say the capital city of David. His home city was Bethlehem. But Trump is undoing the things that the church did to bring down the United States, to emasculate the United States. The United States has to remain somewhat powerful, and it cannot be controlled. This goes for England too. Neither country can be controlled by the church, as we are seeing happening with the European Union. It's all controlled by the church, and the United Nations, again, controlled by the church.
Okay, now let's put that there, and let me bring the other arguments. And this is a conversation, and let me bring up one Benjamin Netanyahu, okay? And that's not spelled Y-A-H-O-O, which okay. Benjamin Netanyahu. As a judge at the 9/11 Vancouver 9/11 War Crimes Tribunal, Benjamin Netanyahu was a known co-conspirator in the 9/11 Black Ops.
Yes,
okay.
And as you know from the tribunal that you attended,
mm-hmm.
The last tribunal, which didn't go well, was to do what? If you could refresh everybody's memory.
This was a 9/11 War Crimes Tribunal, which was called here in Vancouver, and Judge Connie Fogel, who was a leading Canadian human rights lawyer, and I were the judges, and Professor James Fetzer was the organizer, and he brought together 20 of the leading scholars on 9/11, and we held about a 2-week trial here. And among the principal culprits in 9/11 was Benjamin Netanyahu and the state of Israel, a whole bunch of characters in the state of Israel. So I'm building up a case for Netanyahu as an antichrist. And so what if Benjamin Netanyahu, who is not only a political leader, but he is a leader in the current Sanhedrin, and a secret mover behind all of the lethal armed guards and poison gas, to make sure that none of the disclosure information behind the Dead Sea Scrolls gets out. And that seems to me to be logical, because I've been active in the disclosure movement now since 1973, and that's over 40 years. And Dr. Frank Strange's information, I mean, this is the first that it really comes out to me, so it's a deeply held secret that the Sanhedrin and that the Dead Sea Scrolls has held on to. And you yourself said that you were shown it in a very deep.
Interesting how the truth gets out, huh?
Yeah. I mean, and it's just now through Dr. Francis Strange's, and the only political figure that I can think of that would have both the political connection to the secret Sanhedrin and at the same time the political chops and the religious chops would be Benjamin Netanyahu, and that he would be the equivalent to the Jesuit Pope would be Netanyahu, because that gets into the Jesuit secret government on the one hand through the current Pope, and on the other hand to the secret the secret Jesuit Pope is the one rider, and that's an anti-Christic force. And then on the other hand, the other rider, which is also an anti-Christic force, is the Netanyahu, who it seems to me has the chops both to be the political, to have carried off not 9/11, and also to have put in place, at this time of tremendous effort behind the disclosure movement. I mean, if it had been known during all this time that Jesus was basically a disclosure activist.
Yeah.
I mean, God.
Yeah, it's
really? I mean, no, really. I mean, if this had been known that Jesus was a disclosure activist, the last 40 years would have been entirely different. I can tell you that this would have been framed as Christianity's greatest gift to humanity. No, really.
I agree totally.
I can tell you that as a Christian and a disclosure activist. I mean, I was raised in Christian boarding schools in a Christian household, and that's how I would have written my books about it. So I was missing that piece of the puzzle.
Yeah, and you see that's actually a piece that I had, because I comprehended that situation. I comprehended the situation more from the actual hermeneutic. Well, I guess you could call it the hermeneutics viewpoint, but I understood it from the prophetic viewpoint, and understood the political structure that is within the Bible, within Scripture, that is used as far as Yahuwah, Jesus, and as we get down to where we are here on earth, there's actually a legal case as to the ownership of earth. If that's where it all starts.
Yeah, and so maybe the reason why the Sanhedrin put him to death and did their dance with Pontius Pilate and everything was because he was doing ET disclosure. And that's
I wouldn't put it past the situation. He was talking very frankly in a way that they would understand.
You come up to the modern era and look at all the ET disclosure activists that have been put together by basically the American government that has been infiltrated by the Zionists.
And so which ET story do you think we're going to get?
It was the Zionists who put John F. Kennedy to death. It was the Sanhedrin that put John F. Kennedy to death. It was the Sanhedrin that did 9/11. It was a Sanhedrin that has done all of this. They put Jesus to death. They put John F. Kennedy to death. They did 9/11, and they're continuing with the Antichrist cover-up. And you could even say that Benjamin Netanyahu is the Antichrist. If you're looking for an Antichrist, is Benjamin Netanyahu.
If you wanted a face for it, yeah, I guess you could.
Or somebody of that ilk. There are even people say that, oh no, he's the guy in Montreal, the guy with the liquor company there.
That one I don't know.
Who I'm talking about, the big French Canadian mover and shaker in kind of Jewish affairs. They say that he is a member of the Sanhedrin who ordered John F. Kennedy killed.
Could very well be. What I had written, to this subject that we're on now, Letters to Earth is 13 chapters long.
Yeah.
And two of those chapters, chapter 10 and chapter 11, are dedicated to this very problem, what we're facing now. And I expose, and this is what got me in trouble with Letters to Earth. This is why, this is the part that opened up the pit of despair, so to speak. But in chapters 10 and 11, I expose this very thing that we call Zionism for what it's worth, and which is nothing, but it's not. It's using their own words. And so what I did is I went back to the Protocol of the Learned Elders of Zion. Now people are starting to, oh, that's all bullshit. So excuse me. But if you had a copy of the Protocol of the Learned Elders of Zion in Russia after the Bolshevik Revolution, it was an automatic death sentence. So if this was a joke, or if this was a hoax book, or if it was a plagiarized version of who knows what they were claiming about it. I forget exactly. It was a plagiarized version of somebody's novel.
Yeah.
That it was supposed to be. Well, if it was so useless, why were people being killed for having a copy of it?
Exactly. Now, what is the formal name of the Elders of Zion? The Sanhedrin.
Yes. That's where it comes out of.
The Sanhedrin are the Elders of Zion.
So
that's what they are. They are the Elders of Zion. That's the Sanhedrin.
Yes, I agree.
So it's the protocols of the Sanhedrin. So the Sanhedrin, listen, the Jesuits, my uncle was the deputy Black Pope. He was the second in command of the Jesuits.
Thanks, Alfred.
Under Pedro Arrupe. And Pedro Arrupe was the worst Black Pope in history because he got fired by Pope John Paul II. Why? Because he blew the assassination of Pope John Paul II, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And so Pope John Paul II fired him. Now,
he blew the assassination of the first.
I got along great with Pope John Paul II. I met him and hung out with him at a closed spiritual enclave in Mexico outside of Mexico City for 40 days, and that was fine. But the Jesuits are porch brethren compared to the Sanhedrin.
Oh, yeah.
But actually, my understanding is that both the Jesuits, you can trace the Jesuits back to the Templars, and that both the Templars and the Sanhedrin both trace back to Babylon, to the Babylonian temples.
Yeah, I was just going to go there. As a matter of fact, what you have here, if we look at the first three rulers in it, well, this goes back to ancient Samaria. The first three rulers of ancient Samaria were Nimrod, Semiramis, and Tammuz. Nimrod was the king of, and he was also the god of the sun. He made himself the sun god, like Ra. We get the story out of Egypt of Ra. Semiramis becomes the goddess of the earth, moon, and stars. And Tammuz, who's, according to the historic account, Semiramis has Nimrod killed, and she becomes pregnant. She claims it's Nimrod incarnate and gives birth to the star child, or the star god child, Tammuz. And so what we have is essentially the three symbols which are used by the three main religions all are connected right back to the first three rulers of the Sumerian Empire. You've got what we know as the Star of David, which isn't the Star of David, it's the Star of Molech or Moloch. That would have been used for Nimrod, and that it was most made famous by the Egyptian god Set, or really by Baal, and the goes right back to child sacrifice. Molech or Moloch was a god. It was actually a title. It meant terrible god. And that god required live child sacrifice. So that goes all the way back to ancient Samaria, and that goes right back to Nimrod. as I said, Seriamis, the goddess of the earth, moon, and the stars. And so when we look at who the church worships as Mary, it's really Seriamis. If you ever notice, you know the little lawn ornament that a lot of Catholic people will put out there. It's you got the earth, moon, and the stars. It Mary's all there. And then you've got the star child Tammuz, which the symbol is actually, people all get bent out of shape when they see an upside down cross. That was the way that the original symbol was, because it was a male phallus that they were holding. So you had the erect shaft and the testicles that they were presenting, and that was the sign for Seriamis. It became the Ankh cross, the cross of life under Egypt. And then the symbol for the star god child, very simple. Who is the mother? The goddess of the moon. We have the fertile crescent, and we've got the five-sided star to symbolize a star god child. And the church just basically, you've got all three religions identified right with the first three rulers of ancient Samaria, installed by the Anunnaki, who were kind enough to give us religion and government. Yeah. So.
Right. Do you know that?
And a flat earth, I might add.
Yeah. And every time that I've used the word Sanhedrin in any post, I've gotten knocked off of.
Oh, yeah.
I've gotten blocked. So I think that right now the big secret that they're guarding is that the Sanhedrin is charged with being the chief antichrist on the planet.
It was 2,000 years ago, Alfred. It was 2,000 years ago.
And so right now, I feel that I'm just talking for myself, that I feel I've got to blow the lid on the fact that the Sanhedrin is continuing to block Jesus and the Christian role in disclosure, and they're doing it because they want to continue this as a satanic planet, and that's basically their role. That's how I see it.
I've got a scripture for you personally here, Alfred, and I know that you know this one. Revelation chapter 3, verse 9, it says, "Look, I will give those from the synagogue of Satan who say they are Jews and yet they are not, but are lying. Look, I will make them come and do obeisance before your feet, and you will make and make them know that I have loved you." So they will be reduced. Notice it says directly, the synagogue of Satan, those who claim to be Jews and are not, but are lying.
Yeah.
Revelation 3:9.
Now, how do you know that Mr. T, we'll just say Mr. T, and you know who I'm referring to,
Yep,
is not making nice with the S of S?
we don't know. I've done a lot of research into looking for some secret back door to Trump, and I can't find it, not even Freemasonry, which would be an obvious one and an easy one, but there's no hard proof or facts to any of this. So the only thing that I could possibly bring it back to is his German roots. It might have something to do with his German roots, because it seems you got the Reformation that started out of Germany. You've got all these, you got the Holocaust out of Germany. You got my family who started out of Germany, was persecuted by the church for over 200 years and tried to be wiped off of Europe. So you've got a lot of things which seems to have started out of Germany for some reason. You take the financing of Germany by the Bushes and Harrimans and Roosevelts during World War I. I'm sorry, during World War II. You have World War One and World War II. You've got Operation Paperclip, which came out of World War II, all because of Germany. The SS, what, 50,000 people is set up to about 55,000 people came out of Germany and was installed in the United States. And these are all leftovers from the Third Reich, either working for the Vatican, because the Vatican was very pro-Third Reich. The Third Reich was supposed to be the third 1,000-year reign of the Holy Roman Empire. But the Nazi Party was made up of German workers, which would have been NA for the German word for work is Arbeit, so it would have been National Arbeit. And then you had ZI for Nazis coming together. I mean, ZI for Zionists, put them both together and you get Nazi.
Right.
And so the Nazi was a composite of the Jesuits and the Zionists.
Right.
Yeah, you look at the symbols. The symbols tell the story. The politician might lie, but I promise you, when you look at the elephant or the donkey, you know which politician is lying just by the symbol that they're standing in front of.
Yeah, and look, here we have the Dead Sea Scrolls. Here we have the Gospel of Jesus, in which he is saying he's making a mega disclosure.
Yeah.
And that is not a formal part of a mega disclosure, which is under the tightest security of the Mossad and the Sanhedrin government. And it is not even touched by the disclosure movement.
And I love the fact that I wrote about this in Letters to Earth 9 years ago.
Could you unpack all of that from a hermeneutic point of view, from a current affairs point of view, from a meaning point of view, from a Christ point of view? What is going on here?
We're going to have the rebel forces defeated. And here's the problem. We cannot truly identify the rebel forces. You know, they could be your spiritual guides. They could be the reptilians. They're from every group of extraterrestrial. And when I say extraterrestrial, not from Earth, whether they are interdimensional or semi-physical or whether they are artificial intelligence. We'll classify them all as extraterrestrial. But the current extraterrestrials which have captured Earth are essentially in a prison planet. It's their Alamo. Nobody is going anywhere. They are here doing their worst up until our liberation. When we look at our actual liberation, and we still have some time, but the liberation is going to seem bad. It might be a Nibiru event. It could be a false flag EMP that puts out our lights around the world. It could be a lot of different things that they can actually carry off. But when we look at the signs, it would seem more like a Nibiru or Planet X event. Who the heck knows? Maybe the Death Star itself might be showing up. It depends on how real this ET thing actually gets, how physical, I should say, not how real. It's going to be real. It's just how physical it actually gets. And as I said, we're dealing with different life forms. We're not dealing with just one type of 3D life form like us. We're very uncomplicated compared to what these things are. They're totally energy-based. We're carbon-based at the end. Well, we're energy-based too, but you got to go down to the atomic structure to kind of put us together. We're biologic. We're not energy per se. We're more biologic. But they just have a totally different structure, and they can deceive us very, very easy because, cosmically speaking, we're less than an hour to 2 hours old. And these beings could be millions of cosmic years old. And so we're infants. We're infantile to even think that we can deal with them except for one way. And that is to protect ourselves by using either the name Yahuwah, Yahweh, Jehovah, Yeshua, Jesus Christ, Christ the Messiah. You got to use the name Jesus. It's got to be Jesus or Yeshua. But Jesus Christ will work just as good because you got to put that title in there. And we can command archonic life forms, demonic life forms, and protect ourselves from these entities. So we have no reason to be afraid. We need to be educated, and we need to be fearless in what we do. Don't take no for the answer. You know, I've been through a lot of thick and thin over the years, as you well know, Alfred. You followed up my work. We followed each other's work for quite some time, and we both faced adversaries, and most of the time not from this planet. It's just the way it works. So we got to take courage and have faith, but most of all, we have to have love for each other, love for our Creator, and love for our Savior. It's all it comes to get down to. It's the Father, the Son, and us. We don't need a clergy class. We don't need a government to protect us. If we're working from the basis of love, we're a family. And that's where it's going to take us back. So, yep. Once we are restored, the words I read earlier, which Jesus said, I've created a universe, and there are multitudes of places and orbs along with earth. You will be your future dwelling places. I have prepared many places for you to visit, and also places for you to dwell in the future. The future's almost here. We're not talking millennia. We're not talking decades. We're talking years, because where we are, we can see these things are the last prophecies that need to be fulfilled. So when we see this exposing of this lawlessness, when we see religion being taken down, we're right there. Because after religion goes, we know that, picture all the religious fanatics who love their church, whether it's regardless of the faith that they claim to be. When those doors close, there's going to be a lot of unrest. So, yeah, we're going to see some hard times, but we got to keep that basic principle. Love the Father, love our neighbor.
Right.
And that's simple. That's something that we can do. It's not a whole bunch of set of laws. It comes down to something that humans naturally do. We just have to love the good things. We have to put Jesus back in our life. We've got to put Yahuwah or Yahweh, the Father, back in our life. We have to make these connections when we pray to the Father, ask it in Jesus' name. This all reconnects us back to the very cosmos. It has nothing to do with religion. Nobody has ever heard me say, you got to join this religion, you got to join that religion. They're all garbage. They're all means of control. A family is not a religion. It's a family. Go give somebody a hug, But make sure you know them enough. Otherwise, you'll get in trouble with everything. I mean, you touch somebody the wrong way, look at them the wrong way, who knows? They'll be accusing you of who knows what in the government anymore. So be polite. Treat people like they're your brother, your sister, your aunt, your uncle, depending on their age. Have respect for each other. Start to cultivate those things, and we'll come out of this on top, I promise.
Isn't this what they call the spirit of Antichrist? This kind of meme that's now enveloping the earth?
Yeah, it's all demonic, and
meme.
You look at how our entertainment is all based, and it's not based on anything. It's debased. It's debased to the point where Satan is cool. Demonic entities are cool. Death is cool. Skull and crossbones are cool. What, Jesus? You go to church? You believe in Jesus? You say prayers? What kind of fool are you? Being confused about your gender and who you really are is cool. Come on, get a grip. Teach our kids some values. And that's really, that's how Trump is winning. How he's being controlled, if he knows he's being controlled, what entities are actually controlling him, who knows? But he's doing something. He's bringing family values back to the people of America. So we have a chance. We have a chance. It's like going to be the calm before the storm. There's the prophecy that says when the nations declare peace and security, then the end will be instantly upon them, just as the pangs of distress of a pregnant woman. And so here we are approaching that time, but we don't have peace and we don't have security yet. But those things are being put into place. If we can wipe out the child trafficking, get rid of a lot of the wars, the Sanhedrin will roll over and say, aren't we wonderful? We got rid of all these things for you. And then we're going to get caught in a trap. I wrote it. It's all explained in Letters to Earth. And I explain what we got to do to get out of that trap. And I'm doing what I can as far as moving that trap, moving away from being in that trap. And that's getting off the grid and taking my family with me. You don't have to be off the grid, but boy, get out of a city, get out of major populated areas. They're going to become really, really tough to deal with. So we have time, and that's good.
We were talking just a bit prior to the program about how you felt being off the grid. Could you share some of that again?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is great, and it's something that we don't realize on a day-to-day basis. As a matter of fact, if you just move off the grid, you won't realize it right away because it takes a little bit for it to wear off. But we were off the grid for about 6 months. And when I say off the grid, there's no electric lines anywhere. The cell tower is about 30 miles away, and that's about right at the edge of cellular communication. So there is nothing that's electric unless we make it electric. And, if it run machinery and things that we need for the building project is really the only time we don't have any real hookup. Do have a solar panel. We recharge batteries. It's DC. It's not alternating current. And we only are inside when we go to sleep. At night we'll eat dinner and go to sleep inside of a travel trail. And that's the only electric that we really are around, is that travel trailer. And that's only for sleeping. The rest of the time you're out and, you're in the natural environment. When I came down here, it took virtually no time. In one day, my sleep patterns were messed up. I could literally feel like a compression against my body. My appetite started to diminish immediately. And I'm not outside anymore. I'm now inside. I'm in more densely populated area. Everybody's got Wi-Fi around here. The cell tower is less than a mile away. And I got AC going all day long. And what probably makes matters worse is I'm in front of this thing here, communicating with people and being zapped by whatever is coming off of this computer screen. So, and that's all, you can feel it. You can feel the way that it affects you. I use the expression, when does a fish know that it's wet? Fish never realize it's wet until it's out of water. You want to realize you're wet? Get off of the grid, spend a week or two off the grid, and then come back and put yourself on the grid, and you'll feel the change. It's a compression against your body and your mind and your spirit. And when we hook up and start playing with our computers or smartphones, we're now communicating with artificial intelligence that's essentially looking at everything that we do and only giving us more of what we think we want. So we have to change our modus operandi. The less complicated that we can make our lives, the more simple we can keep it, the more back to nature that we can go, the better off we'll be. We have to replace the artificial intelligence with organic intelligence and start learning things again. And we have time. It's not like we're facing doomsday tomorrow or the next day. And hopefully we can go along this year and have, wouldn't be a whole lot different than last year. Hopefully it'll be better because they'll round up more illegal criminals. And I'm not talking about illegal aliens that are in the United States because they don't have visas. I'm talking about the real criminals in Washington, D.C. and in your state and in your local community where they've been fleecing us blind and running our lives, turning us into slaves. Hopefully we'll see that go. Hopefully we'll see more jobs created and we'll see more wages being earned, better wages being earned, and we'll have at least some relief before the storm. But make no mistake, the King of Kings and Lord of Lords will be back with the armies of the heavens to set up his government right here on this planet and restore us back to the original design. So we've got a fantastic future to look forward to. We're going to have a little bit of a rough ride. It's going to be difficult for a lot of people. We may see a lot of doom, gloom, and death. But as long as we follow just the simple, basic things, the main key being love for our Creator and Father Yahuwah, Yahweh Jehovah, and for each other is key. I can't stress that enough. All of the research, everything that I've done comes down to that one key thing, putting and keeping ourselves in a state of love. And with that, Alfred, love and blessings to all. If you haven't read Letters to Earth, it's time to read it. We have a fantastic future. It's not doom and gloom. It's not the end of planet Earth. It's the end of the satanic system of evil.
So where can people who wish to read Planets to Earth?
Letters to Earth can be found at Letters to Earth. The Future is Yours. I changed publishers about a year ago, and so we kind of did a name change on the book. The Future is Yours. You can find it at Barnes & Noble, Amazon.com. You can order it from your local bookstore. If you want to read a copy of Letters to Earth and you find that you don't have the money to spend for the hard copy or the soft copy, I gave everybody a wonderful gift for this time of the year. You can go to my Facebook page, Peter Kling, Peterkling, scroll down the page, and you will see that there is a link for a free PDF copy that you can go and start reading right now as soon as you're done listening to the interview. I didn't count. I don't know how many copies people have made for themselves. Make yourself a copy. Give a copy to your friends. Give a copy to everybody that you know. I don't care. I don't care if I make another dime on this book. My publisher cares. I care more for you folks that are out there so you get a clue to the reality and the facts of life and what we are facing and be prepared. Yeah, we all need money to go on. The Lord will take care of my needs. I always keep him in my prayers. I ask everything. I pray every day and use his name profusely and profoundly. Both use Yahweh or Jehovah, and always Yeshua or Jesus. So do that, and you're not going to worry about it. You're not going to be a millionaire. You're not going to be rich. I get by day to day. I have very few things. I keep my life as simple as possible, and yet I am able to do things which are beyond normal. Real quick, in a closing, I say beyond normal. This project, if you've been following us, has taken some time. This is the second year, and we're still not done. And we've got more work to do, and we're not done with the footings yet. However, the footings are about 3 feet wide at the bottom. They are 9 feet high, and when it be finished, 14 inches wide at the top. They're made of stone and concrete. We calculated each linear foot of finished wall to be approximately between 4,000 and 5,000 pounds. There's 128 linear feet involved. That weight has been picked up and put down between 5 and 10 times. So when you start doing the massive amount of numbers, we're lifting a lot of weight and doing beyond what's normal. We're lifting anywhere between, this is both myself, my son. The rocks have to be cleaned. In many cases, they're cut. They're all re-washed after that, and I mean washed with a pressure washer. Then they're carried to where they need to go to be put into the wall. They got to be lifted up on the wall. They got to be lifted and then set down into place and then concreted into place. And that all takes time and effort and strength beyond what is normal. There's only the two of us working on that. So if you just calculate the, let's say 5,000 pounds times 100 linear feet, you're looking at 500,000 pounds that's lifted up in, let's call it 10 times to make it more impressive. We're into millions of pounds of weight. But we're building something monumental, which is going to last until the end of the millennium. And that's why it's built in the manner in which it's built. It's been built to last. As I told my son, yeah, it's a lot of work. It's a monumental task. That's exactly what it is. So hopefully we'll be finished with it this year. We do have, we're going to be going up earlier this year. We have more people involved. A friend of mine has moved to, good friend of mine for a very long time has moved to Maine. And he'll be bringing his family with him too. So it's not that we have a compound. We're building a new home, but it's an area where there is plenty of land available. If you're looking at starting a new life and don't mind below freezing temperatures, hey, I chose this part of the country for a reason. Other people might like it warmer. Other people might like it cooler. You have to go to a place where you feel safe. There are no safe cities. So get out of them, my people, if you do not want to suffer in their judgment. Jesus said, when you see the disgusting thing standing where it ought not, flee to the mountains. I saw the disgusting thing which wiped out, more than decimated my family for 200 years. When a representative of the Vatican was standing in the Capitol, the White House, and Independence Hall in the country in which I was born and raised. That set off all sorts of alarm bells for me. So we're short. Time is short, but it's not over. We have time yet to make decisions and to make moves and to do things. We still have peace that we're dealing with, and hopefully things will get better, so we'll be in a better position to get ready for the change. When you see these things occur, stand up, lift yourselves erect. Your deliverance is getting near. So remember, folks, the meek shall inherit the earth. Love and blessings to all. I've taken up a pile of time here. Alfred, most thankful for the time that we spent together. And well, I'm not going to be off the grid completely, hopefully before I do go off the grid, because this time will be the last time. Maybe we can get together and do another interview tour in a few more months to see how things are developing. It'll be probably May before I'm off the grid. We got to wait for the weather to change over before we can finish our project. So I'll still be on the grid, not quite as connected as what I am now, but I should be able to get messages back and forth. I broke a cardinal rule. I bought a smartphone. So at least I can finally broke down and got a smartphone. But just because we're heading back up off the grid, it's really the only way of communication. And I know people like to know how we're doing. So again, folks, love and blessings to all. Alfred, love and blessings to you and yours. Thank you very much for this time that we've had. And read Letters to Earth, because the future really is yours.
Thank you, Peter. Thank
My
you.
pleasure.